The last train. Paris's northern station. Midnight had long passed. The platform's stone floor was cold. Damp. Footsteps echoed, and with every step, the silence grew heavier. Elena sat on her small brown suitcase. Hands hidden deep in her coat pockets. Eyes fixed on the train's door. Maybe he'll come. Maybe at the last moment he'll run, breathless, and say, "Don't go." But Daniel never came. They were never two paths that met easily. Elena's life was paint, canvas, and restless dreams. Daniel's life was ties, meetings, and the weight of a family business. Two worlds apart, connected only by a fragile bridge. Thin, trembling. Always ready to break. For a year, they tried. Rainy mornings in quiet cafes. Poetry hidden in coffee steam. Walks along the Seine, where silence spoke louder than words. On summer nights, the sky was their only roof. They looked at the stars, spoke of tomorrow. But every sentence ended with an unfinished future. One evening, on an old bridge, Daniel's voice shook. "I promised my father," he said. "They are waiting for me. I can't leave." Elena remained silent. One word was at the tip of her lips, "Stay." But she swallowed it. Because if she spoke, Daniel would be chained. And love should never be a chain. And now, she waited for the last time. The metallic scent of the rails filled the air. The train's whistle pierced the night. Her heart almost leapt from her chest. She searched the crowd. Strangers. Rushing shoulders. No familiar face. Daniel was not there. Elena breathed deeply. She stood. Her hands trembled as she gripped the suitcase handle. At the train door, she paused. Daniel's laughter, his unfinished sentences, flashed in her mind. Her lips moved. Soft, quiet, only for herself. "Goodbye, Daniel." The train began to move. The ground trembled. From the window, Paris's lights flickered, fading into the dark. The city swallowed their story, leaving behind nothing but a silent elegy. The sorrow of a love left unfinished. Elena closed her eyes. There was pain. But also, a strange peace. A year before. It had begun so differently. Spring in Paris was merciful and cruel at once. Cherry blossoms fell like confetti on narrow streets, their pink petals carpeting the cobblestones. Elena remembered the first day she met Daniel. She had been sketching in Montmartre, trying to capture the curve of a woman's hat in watercolor. He had leaned over, his tie loose, sleeves rolled, eyes like a stormy sea, asking politely, "Do you mind if I watch?" Something in his voice made her hesitate. She was used to solitude, to the quiet of her thoughts. But he had a presence, a quiet insistence that invited trust. And somehow, she had let him stay. They had wandered through the city together that day, Elena showing him the secret alleys where artists sold tiny canvases, Daniel telling her about meetings, contracts, obligations. They laughed. And though the laughter was warm, it was always shadowed by a sense of impermanence, like a melody played in a minor key. They had kissed once, under a street lamp, when the rain began to fall softly, misting the cobblestones. It had been impulsive. Fragile. Perfect in its impossibility. Dreams and distance. Elena's dreams were painted in colors Daniel could not name. She often found herself staring at the ceiling of her tiny studio apartment, imagining skies of teal and lavender, oceans that whispered her name. Daniel's world was a monochrome of business suits and the clatter of conference calls. He tried, though. He tried to understand her, to step into her world. He would stand beside her at the riverside, watching her paint, saying, "Tell me what you see." But every time, the gap returned. He saw shapes and forms, but never the feeling behind the brushstroke. And she saw numbers and deadlines where she sought passion and meaning. And yet, they were drawn to each other. Drawn like two magnets, unwilling to fully meet, but unable to fully part. The last days. In the final weeks before tonight, Elena's anticipation had grown almost unbearable. She imagined Daniel running, confessing, abandoning everything to be with her. Each morning, she checked her phone, expecting a message. A "wait for me" text. But the screen remained blank. Paris itself seemed to hold its breath. The cafe smelled of fresh bread and coffee, streets shimmered under rain, and the Seine flowed quietly, as if hiding secrets beneath its waters. Every corner reminded her of him: the cafe where he laughed at her terrible croissant joke, the bridge where he had held her hand too briefly, the tiny bookstore where she had found a poetry collection he claimed as too sentimental. But he never came. The night. The station was nearly empty. A few travelers lingered, their suitcases forming small islands in the cold marble expanse. Elena's suitcase felt heavier than usual, filled not only with clothes but with the weight of a love that had refused to bend. She thought about the countless nights she had dreamt of this moment. Some dreams ended with him on the platform, arms open. Others ended with her alone, staring at the tracks as the train disappeared. Reality, she realized now, belonged to the second kind. She gripped the handle tighter. Her fingernails dug into her palms. The sound of the approaching train made her chest ache. Each screech of metal on metal was a pulse, counting down the last seconds of what might have been. She remembered the way he smelled. Daniel's scent lingered like faint smoke, sandalwood and rain, even in the memory. It was the smell of a promise never kept, of love suspended in time. Letting go. The train's doors opened. Steam hissed. She took a deep breath. She had practiced this goodbye 100 times. Not the words, they were impossible, but the act of moving forward. She whispered again, only for herself. "Goodbye, Daniel." Her lips trembled, but the sound carried none of the anger or bitterness that might have followed. Only sorrow, quiet and dignified. She stepped onto the train, feeling the suitcase beneath her as if it were a part of her own body, carrying her memories, her regrets, her unfinished poems. Outside, Paris disappeared. The lights blurred into gold and gray streaks. The streets she had walked with him, the cafes where laughter had felt like hope, the bridges where secrets had been exchanged, all vanished in the night. For a moment, she felt weightless. And then, reality pressed back. She leaned against the window, staring at nothing. And yet, she felt something she had never expected: release. Love, she realized, was not always about holding on. Sometimes, it was about letting go. Afterward. Hours later, when the train slowed and she arrived in another city, she stepped off with quiet resolve. Her suitcase rolled beside her, rhythm matching the pulse of her heartbeat. She walked into the early morning streets, where the first light of dawn brushed buildings in gold and rose. Paris was far behind. Daniel was far behind. And yet, she carried him still, not as a burden, but as a memory, a brushstroke on the canvas of her life. The air smelled of possibility. Not every future would be filled with poetry or love, but hers would be hers alone. And that was enough. Elena lifted her face to the rising sun, let the warmth touch her cheeks, and for the first time in a long time, smiled. Her heart hurt. But it was alive. The train had taken more than a city from her that night. It had taken her illusions, her waiting, her half-lived dreams. And in return, it had given her something she hadn't expected: herself. Thank you for being with me on this melancholic journey. Every story touches a corner of our hearts. I hope this tale has left a mark on yours as well. Looking forward to meeting again in new stories. See you in your next listening session.